Hey, what's up everybody? Terry White here, and there's been a ton of news and developments around generative AI. And I've been hearing a lot of questions and concerns and DMs and posts about it and what's Adobe's position, what's their approach, and how do they think it will impact the community. Today, Adobe released a new page that covers the questions and answers that people ask most. And I thought I would take a moment to walk you through it. I've done two things to make it easier for you. First, I put a link to the page that I'm going to be covering in the description below so you can jump right to it yourself, read along, refer back to it, refer others to it. Secondly, I've divided this video into chapters so that you can jump ahead to any specific question you want to know the answer to right away and get the answer. And of course, refer back to those and even have links to those specific chapters to share out if you need to. Let's get to it. So this is the page and this is what it looks like. It's titled, Our Approach to Generative AI with Adobe Firefly. Now, you'll hear me refer to Adobe Firefly throughout this video, and whenever I say Adobe Firefly, I'm referring to Adobe's generative AI model. That's the name of it. This starts out with a cool mission statement. Adobe's mission is to provide the world with tools, resources, and solutions that empower and enable creative endeavors. Great. I also think it's important to call out two things here. Adobe does not see generative AI as a replacement for creatives, but rather another tool in your tool belt. Secondly, when developing Firefly, Adobe focused on developing it in a way that is respectful of creator rights. Let's move to the meat of this. Let's get to the bullet points that you've been asking about. The number one thing that people have asked, whether it's DMs, text messages, comments, posts, whatever you've done, this is the one I see the most. And let's be very clear with this one right off the bat. Adobe says, we do not and have never trained Adobe Firefly on customer content. What is customer content? The things that people ask about. My hard drive, the photos I upload to Lightroom's cloud, files that I keep in Photoshop or Illustrator or InDesign in the cloud, or anything I share for review. Basically any of your customer content. Adobe does not train the Adobe Firefly model on any of that. Period. Never has. So alleviate that concern. No, Adobe's not scanning your hard drive. No, Adobe's not installing stuff to mine your images to train Adobe Firefly. Does not happen. Didn't happen. So with that said, the next thing you might be asking is bullet point number 2. Well, if they're not using my stuff, my content, my artwork, my images, then what is Firefly trained on? And that's bullet point number 2. Adobe only trains Adobe Firefly on content where they have the permission or rights to do so. And it's basically two sources. Number 1, Adobe Firefly is trained on a data set of licensed content such as Adobe Stock and public domain where the copyright has expired. So number 1, Adobe Stock, where they have permission to do so, and public domain where the license has expired. If it's not one of those two things, it's not being used to train Adobe Firefly. I'll reiterate that throughout the video. Now, with that said, one thing to keep in mind that if Adobe in the future does add other sources for training Firefly, it will be data sets that they have the permission or rights to do so. As of today, recording of this video, it is 2 sources. Doesn't mean in the future it can't be more, but if it is more, it will be ones that they have the permission and rights to do so. Well, okay, you're not using my stuff. You're using stuff from Adobe Stock. If I understand correctly, Adobe Stock is a place where even I as an individual can contribute my photos and videos, and you'll license them to people and I'll get a commission. That's the way Adobe Stock and most stock places work. So how does that work with Firefly? And by the way, I am an Adobe Stock contributor. So as an Adobe Stock contributor for years, I've uploaded photos and videos. And like anything, I upload thousands. The more you upload, the better chance you have of selling things. And a lot of my content gets licensed. I know the fee structure. I get a commission, and it's great. As a photographer, as a creator, it's just great to be able to have another way, another revenue source. Number 2, recently, with the whole introduction of Firefly, I signed or agreed to a license agreement to be a stock contributor in the first place. And part of that license agreement enables Adobe to use content to train Adobe Firefly. So you as a regular Creative Cloud customer would not be in that because you didn't agree to that particular document. I did. So therefore, the thousands of pieces of content that I've uploaded over the years now has a new life. The first life is if someone goes and searches for an image and licenses it, great, I get a commission. But if Adobe uses any of that content to train Adobe Firefly, guess what? I get a payment, and I've already gotten a payment for it. It's amazing. It makes me want to upload more. So with that said, as a stock contributor, you're getting compensated for your images being used to train Adobe Firefly. If you're not a stock contributor, it doesn't apply to you. All right, next up, and I kind of already talked about this. Next bullet point is Adobe does compensate creators who contribute to Adobe Stock for the use of their content in the training of Adobe Firefly. So this was an automatic payment. It was nothing you had to sign up for. If your content was used, and depending on the volume of content you have, so payments can vary, of course, you just got paid for it. And I love that I got paid just automatically for that happening. So let's jump to the next bullet point. Well, we already talked about the two sources that are used to train Adobe Firefly: Adobe Stock, public domain, where the license has expired. So does that mean you're also scanning the internet? You have a bot going out, reading my portfolio, reading Facebook, reading Instagram, wherever I post images? No. Two sources: Adobe Stock, public domain, where the license has expired. So Adobe does not have bots that go out and mine the internet for photos and images like some other companies have done, which has given generative AI a bad name in the first place. Adobe has not done that and does not do that. So other companies do it. We can't control what other companies do, but just letting you know, Adobe doesn't do it. All right, so next up, and this is a big one. This is one that a lot of people don't realize. Adobe developed Adobe Firefly to prevent it from creating content in the first place that infringes copyright or intellectual property rights. And secondly, it's designed to be commercially safe. So what does the first one mean? The first one means that while it is trained on Adobe Stock, it is trained on that public part of Adobe Stock that does not use intellectual property. Now, there's another part of Adobe Stock for editorial use. So let's say you're a writer and you're writing about the company Nike and you need a shot of a Nike shoe. You can go license an editorial image that has that Nike shoe in it. Those images are not being used to train Firefly. So if I go into Firefly and type in a prompt or go into Photoshop and do generative fill, and I want to use a Nike shoe and have it generated, it's likely to just either A, give me an error, or just give me a generic sneaker because it doesn't even know what Nike is. So therefore, it's not able to generate content that infringes upon an intellectual property right because it doesn't even know what that content is because it wasn't trained on it. Number two, because of all of this, it's designed to be commercially safe. So that means that I can feel comfortable that if I do ever use Firefly to generate anything, and I want to use that image, maybe in a book that I'm writing or t-shirts that I'm going to print or whatever you're going to use your images for, I don't ever have to worry about somebody coming back at me saying, hey, your image violates blah, blah, blah. Because Firefly is designed to be commercially safe. So I can use it freely. I can not have to think about or worry about what was the source? How did this image come to be? Because it was trained on Adobe Stock content that's licensed to be able to be trained on, and public domain where the license has expired. Nothing else. So therefore, images I generate, parts of images that I generate are commercially safe. All right. Here's another one that I keep seeing popping up. Adobe does not claim ownership of your content, never has, and this includes content you generate with Adobe Firefly. You own your content, your images, your videos, your artwork, your illustrations, your photos, whatever it is, stuff you made, you own it. Adobe has never said or tried to say they own your content. So that is not true. It just isn't true. I don't know how else to say it other than it's not true. So with that said, Adobe doesn't own your content. You do. But more importantly, the second part of that sentence is even content you create with Firefly. So let's say you generate this cool image or part of an image that you're working on, and you do sell that t-shirt, and your design's so great it blows up, and you sell millions of t-shirts. You don't have to ever worry about Adobe coming knocking at your door saying, where's my cut? Hey, I helped you generate that image. I want a commission. No, you own the content, and Adobe doesn't claim ownership of even the content you generate with Firefly. Very clear with that. All right, now this next section is kind of a work in progress. It's the Content Authenticity Initiative, which is focused on ensuring transparency of content ownership and how it is created. Now, basically what this is it's Adobe founded it, but it's a partnership with lots of organizations and device makers and camera makers and everything, so that basically one day we'll feel comfortable in knowing how an image was created. So you send me an image, and maybe I'm judging a photo contest, and I don't know if your image was really taken with your camera or you generated it. I'll be able to verify that image and see the content credentials in it and say, oh, this image was, shot with a blah, blah, blah camera, and yes, it was edited in Photoshop, but nothing was generated. Or this image was completely generated with generative AI, and therefore it's not technically part of the photo contest. So that's where the CAI initiative is headed, to enable creators and anyone basically that wants to know the source of an image and how that image came to be. All right, so with that said, next up, and this is another big one that is not well known, Adobe will defend property rights of the creative community through advocating for the Federal Anti-Impersonation Right Act. So this is an initiative that Adobe took on to basically make it hopefully illegal one day to say that a generative AI company, because Adobe doesn't do this, could say in the style of Terry White, or let someone type that in a prompt. So I take pictures of travel, I take pictures of portraits, and let's say I went and took a picture of the Grand Canyon. And I have a look to that picture. I have a look to all my travel pictures. Well, I wouldn't want someone to go into a prompt at another company and say, generate a picture of the Grand Canyon in the style of Terry White, and it looks like one of my photos. Because that doesn't help me. It's flattering, but it doesn't help me because they're now basically taking my look without my permission. So Adobe's advocating against this in the federal court system to make it a right that companies can't do it. So you basically maintain the rights to your look, to your style, to the way you create things. And that's amazing. That's something I continue to be amazed by, that hopefully we'll get to the point that day, get to that point one day. So companies just can't, use a prompt that's kind of copying your look and your style. All right, last but not least, this last bullet point, Adobe explicitly prohibits third-party companies from training on customer content hosted on Adobe servers such as Behance. So what does that mean? Well, Adobe already told you they only train on 2 things for Firefly, but Adobe's a big company with lots of partnerships and plugins and connectivity to Adobe services. And if a partner, let's say you use a plugin to upload and build a book, well, that partner obviously has access to the photos to build that book. Well, they can't use those photos to train their AI and their generative models. So that's what Adobe is basically saying. You sign up to partner with Adobe, you can't use the content that you're getting access to train your generative AI with it. So no backdoors, and that's it. Now, again, I'll post a link to this document. You can go through it, you can read more, you can see more examples, and you can share it, of course. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to go through this with me. And also continue to respond, put your comments in, put your questions in, and we'll continue to hopefully answer those as we go forward. and address whatever your concerns are. Cheers, everyone. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.